I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have a much more than diplomatic passport. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not too sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk. Let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
Hello and welcome to the December 17th edition of the Bubb Reports. I am Rion Charles. This week, we put a wrap on our budget conversation that started last week by drawing our attention to the agricultural sector and the appeals advanced by an independent senator and a former minister of agriculture about the lower estimates advanced for this key driver of economic activity in fiscal year 2024. The current administration promised to make significant investments in agriculture and food safety. Today on our program, we will put this commitment to the test. But first, Chantel Maguire is here with our installment of Maguire Money Moves. In this month's episode, Maguire delves into the anatomy of investing in the stock market by articulating the importance of stock market investing and how to reap the rewards from doing it right. We welcome our guests, Michael Baptiste, former Minister for Agriculture, William Joseph, political commentator, and Senator Salim Rahman, the private sector representative in the upper house of Grenada's parliament. Here is Chantel Maguire with the first segment of today's installment of the Bubb Reports. We thank you for joining us.
Your host of Maguire Money Moves. I'm so happy you guys are able to join us again for another segment. This is officially our second informational segment on Maguire Money Moves, and I plan to dive into investments. A little bit about my background is I worked for the past 10 years in the markets. I started off my career in asset management before becoming an actuary, and throughout that whole process, I've continued managing money and managing funds. So I'm investing in different stock markets and different securities. And today I hope to share a few tidbits that could really help the audience become a little more comfortable with the stock market and find new ways and different ways to invest. And, I'm going to try to keep it simple. So even if you have no knowledge in the markets, you will definitely get some key takeaways that could help you get started. So let's get to it. So as I mentioned today, we will be focusing on the US stock market. That's primarily where I invest and where most of my experience is at. So I, staying in my little wheelhouse. So on that note, we have a few items on the agenda. So today we will first talk about why is it best to invest, right? What makes the stock market attractive? why should you put your money there instead of just leaving it under your mattress or in a bank, or maybe one of a bank products like a CD, etc. We kind of will dive into that. Then secondly, we will talk about the great things about investing in the stock market. The S&P 500 is basically what everybody in the markets use as an indicator of the aggregate of the stock market. It represents like 500 securities that are in the stock market and help move the stock market the most. There are different criteria that makes them enter the S&P 500, but I usually tend to look at them as maybe the largest 500 funds in the market, which normally takes up the entirety of the market, maybe near 80%. I'm just speaking on the top of my head, but it's a large percentage of the actual US stock market. Then thirdly, we want to dive into a simple way for you to invest. If you've ever heard me speak before on investing, I've talked about ETFs, and I'm going to talk about them again today. And I'm going to try to give you a little more insights into, why they are so special to me and why they could be very special to you. And then lastly, we're going to talk about if you're just really not comfortable doing it on your own, there's always, you could hire help, right? I do help people as well with, 30-minute consultations, etc. But there, you don't have to use me. There's all different avenues where you could go and, seek different people for help. I know being in Grenada sometimes is limiting, but, you can always feel free to reach out to me. And I also know a few other people who love to invest, but, you just really have to do research and get help. So on that note, why invest in stocks? The benefits of investing, I put them in 3 major buckets. 1, you get higher returns. If you just put your money under the mattress, you're losing money. By day after day, that money becomes more and more worthless to you because it reduces in value. I shouldn't say worthless. The money becomes less and less valuable because it reduces the amount of what it can buy, etc. If you put money on a mattress, the price of corn is going up, everything is going up. Your money is not going up the same rate, right? So in essence, your buying power reduces. So one of the best reasons for putting or investing your money in general is so that you can get higher returns to keep up with inflation. But the stock market doesn't only just keep up with inflation. It gives you way more return than inflation and than most products would give you, right? A CD, normally their returns do not compare to what the stock market compares to on average. On average, the returns of the stock market is between 8 to 10% returns. So those high returns are one of the number one reason you should invest in the markets. Yes, there are days when the markets will falter and they'll go down. But I'm telling you, over like the last 100 years, the average has been 8 to 10% returns. And that's if you just leave your money there and you don't touch it. You don't try to be, a trader or, a crazy investment professional. Those tend to, maybe to lose a lot of money doing those type of activity if you're not sure about it. However, if you just park your money in the stock market and leave it for 8 to 10, leave it for like at least 10 years, you should get on average 8 to 10% return. The second major point is investing in the stock markets allow you diversification. So you're going to hear me talk about these ETFs a lot later, but ETFs, as I say, the S&P 500, you could buy an ETF. VOO is one I always tell people about. VOO doesn't require a lot of capital to invest in it. I think it's about 200 US today per VOO. So when you invest in that, you get representation of the entire stock market. You get the representation of the S&P 500. And that is when I say it gives you 8 to 10% returns, those are the average returns of the S&P 500 over the last 100 years. So that's what I'm saying, that diversification that you get out of ETFs, because an ETF basically is an aggregate of the stock market. So it's like every little stock, every little company that's traded publicly, they are a part of the stock market, and you get diversification in your investments doing that. I'm not saying put it all in the stock market. Sometimes you just need some money, in the bank in case of a rainy day, etc. We all have different reasons and uses for money, but the stock market really allows you this diversification where you have a little extra that you don't need to touch. You can really get a new avenue of making returns by investing in the stock market. And then lastly, I know a lot of us in Grenada are dependent on NIS. If you're like me, who's super cautious and maybe a little more, independent, or try to be financially independent, you may want money to support your retirement. You may find that the $1,000 you may get per month from NIS is not sufficient. So what is another way to gather capital and get money in retirement or get money for a rainy day? That is investing in stocks. If you think about it, if you put a pool of money in there that you contribute year over year, and say when you turn the retirement age, you have, say, 200,000 or 100,000 or 50,000 in the stock market, right? And then you still have your NIS coming in, so you're good daily. But next thing, the health issue comes up, right? And you need a large lump sum or a large amount of money, or you want to help your grandkid go to school, or some craziness happened. You want to tap in to a fund that will give you immediate access, and that is what investing in the stock market could do. You can always sell your securities when you're in that time crunch, or you in retirement, you would have accumulated so much interest over the years, 8 to 10%, as I said, and then you have this big pool to work with in retirement to address health needs, to address, if you want to supplement your NIS income to get a little bit more on a monthly, you could use the stock market as a tool to really expand your investments when you're in retirement, or expand the capital that you have accumulated when you reach retirement. Okay, so again, before we move forward, the three major benefits: higher returns, diversification. There's so many different companies, and they're all in there. And then lastly, it can help support your retirement goals. So challenges. Well, right now, I think a lot of people have heard over the years complain like, what they get, from Social Security is not always the most livable or workable. And, from my time working in Grenada, I recall people saying that, when they retire, they like to open a shop and get a big lump sum payment, and they weren't really getting that. So investing in the stock market will allow you to do these things, if you invest over a long period of time. Like if you invest over at least 10 years or more, you could have that big lump sum that then you could use to open a shop or etc., anything that, or just supplement the monthly income that you get from NIS, etc. Lastly, a lot of people think there isn't much places they could put their money locally. I mean, I would love that to change in Grenada. And, I try to make strides to open up the country to different ways that we can invest together. Hopefully, with a few more segments, you'll learn about a lot of my ideas there. But I think there is this challenge that there's very limited ways to invest in Grenada regionally. Where do you put your money? How do you get access? How do you get money out? What is going to give me a return? What should I put my money in regionally? Outside of real estate, I think is very limited amount of ways you could actually make your money work for you. And then lastly, there's a big fear of the financial markets. There have been a lot of funds that have blown up in Grenada, and I do think that fear is warranted. There are some crazy investment professionals who take advantage of, sometimes a small market and, people with limited information, and they're not transparent, and they've had some funds blow up, and people have got hurt really badly, all this money that they saved. And, I think some people are still trying to fight to get some of those funds back. So there's a really valid fear in Grenada today when it comes to investing in the stock market. So those are three of the major challenges that I do believe faces us as Grenadians today. So to me, what is the solution, right? I say keep it simple. That means invest in ETFs, right? Invest in the entire market. Don't try to go picking stocks and, oh, I think this cryptocurrency is going to do well, so I'm going to invest all my money in there. No, keep it simple and keep it broad. Invest in a fund that gives you exposure to the entire market. This way, you can mimic the historical returns a lot better than if you just try to put all your eggs in one basket, right? Spread the basket around. Looking at that spread basket, you get 8 to 10% returns. That's a lot of returns. Yes, if you invest in a really good stock, you could get 500% returns in maybe a month or a year. But you have to be very knowledgeable and have to be very, do a lot of research to understand, what could drive such a ridiculous, increase in price. So keep it simple. Start broad with a broad fund like an ETF, right? These funds mimic the entire stock market. And then I would say another solution is hire help. I'm always here to help. I do consultations. So you can always look out for a professional to just sit with me for 30 minutes and, if you want to learn more and, go slowly as you go. But I do think we could start even without consultations. I know they could be pricey. So you could kind of start on your own by just researching these ETFs. And I'm going to talk all about them next. Well, before I talk about them, let's talk about S&P returns. So this basically was a comparison I did a few years ago. I think back in 2021. This kind of shows you the difference between investing in a bank deposit versus investing in the US market. To me, this is one of the major benefits. First one I talked about, the higher returns. This is what allows us to get higher returns in the stock market. Yes, you can see all those zigzag lines, right? That is the US stock market. That is mimicking the S&P 500, which I've talked about previously. We'll continue to talk about when I talk about ETFs. But the market goes up and down. Yes, it does. You look at this low points, right? Sometimes it goes below the bank deposit line, right? It starts off below the bank deposit line. And then, halfway through the time period that we're looking at, it dips below the bank deposits returns, right? And then, but it aggregates over the whole entire period. This stock market has returned way more than a bank deposit has. You see where we end at the end in March 2021, right? So this kind of returns, instead of you going home with $800, you could go home with $3,000, right? Well, near $4,000. So to me, this is illustrating the value add of investing in the US stock market. Yes, it goes up and down. That's what I always tell you to invest for a long time. Don't try to do periods less than 10 years, right? And, look at when you're trying to take out your money. I would always say take out your money when you see markets are doing well. You could just research online and, compare it to previous years. Is it more in the up category? But let's keep that graph on the page. Let's keep that graph up because I want to speak to when you need to dip out the market. So my advice to you is, when you invest in the US stock market, and unless you have a major emergency, you always try to sell when you see these lines are up. You see when you have these little peaks, that's the best time to sell. Don't sell because you fear that the market is declining and the economy is doing bad. That's not the best time to sell your stocks. The best time to sell your stocks is when you see that historically compared to the returns, and you could just Google this and get this information. The returns are peaking or on the uptrend compared to the last couple of years. Try your best not to sell stocks when you see the market is in decline, or it's at a very low level compared to like maybe the last 10 years. Try to always sell when you see your stocks are in a higher range of the last 10 years. So that's kind of my advice to you. And this really illustrates how much you could kind of get away with more than 3 times your money in the future if you really do invest in the stock market. So that is the higher returns that you get. So for you to open that little shop, or maybe take a dream vacation when you retire, the stock market can allow you those luxuries in life. So yes. So let's move on to the next style of my favorites, the ETFs that we talked about. So what is an ETF? So this is a definition here from Charles Schwab. But basically, an ETFs are, exactly as the name implies, funds that trade on exchanges, generally tracking a specific index. When you invest in an ETF, you get a bundle of assets you can buy and sell during market hours, potentially lowering your risk and exposure while helping to diversify your portfolio. My favorite word, diversify. So I put this basket of fruits on it. So you could use the scenario of fruit being a security. We have a lot of different types of securities. And what an ETF does, it combines all those different types of securities like into one basket, and you buy the basket. So for instance, you may have Apple in there. So I put Apple as a tech company. So every time you see an apple in a basket, you can think of that as Apple, Google, Facebook, etc. Right? Or maybe I should say a watermelon, because those are big giants that take over the stock market as well. So any type of watermelon you see there, you have different types of watermelons, or they have different stains and flavors to them, different patterns on them. I would say those are tech companies. So this basket is filled with watermelons, and they have lemons. So we can see the lemons or airline companies, right? So every time you see an airline, a lemon in there is a different airline company, maybe AA, Delta, JetBlue, etc. The lemons represent the airlines. Then you could have the cucumbers. The cucumbers could represent, say, what's another type of retail stores, such as like Macy's, Nordstrom, North Face, maybe H&M, where other people like to shop up, like those type of Zara, etc. So every time you see a cucumber, they represent a retail company. So when you buy the basket, you buy all of these companies. You really are. And you, instead of having to think about where to put your money and which one will do better than the next, you know what the averages say. So you're just using that simple approach of buying kind of everything so that in the future you'll be set. So that's kind of the concept here with investing in ETFs. ETFs kind of allow you to get a little piece of everything in the stock market, and allows for that diversification that we're talking about, and really minimizes your risk of being in a single security that doesn't do well over time. So that's kind of, I hope you understand it, this basket analogy when it comes to ETFs. You basically are buying a lot of different types of securities, and basically you have a piece of every security in the stock market, right? So that's how ETFs work. So yes. So what are the different types of ETFs? So ETFs are great where you could buy the overall market, as I was discussing earlier. But you could also have different types of ETFs, right? So the first one I put on the list, first bullet, is the overall market, which is always encouraged people to buy. Once you set up your account with Charles Schwab, buy VOO. That's the overall market. That's the most simplest security. You don't have to put your money in anything else. You can just put it in this one security because that security is so diversified. It takes in consideration everything in the market. So that's a great ETF, and that's the one I encourage everybody to buy. Anybody who just wants to invest simply and not look at it again, that's my go-to for anybody who wants to do that. Just show that you have a little big bucket being piled up there. You can contribute to that, a good 5% of your income every month. By the time retirement, you're good to go. So what are these other types of ETFs, right? ETFs come in a lot of flavors and forms. So this is where I would say get your research skills on when it comes to ETFs, because ETFs can have different focuses as well, right? So we have the overall ETF, which I love, and I always encourage my clients in. But then if you want to dabble a little more in the market, you have different views of what's going to be successful in the future. And I try to put a little bit of some of my favorites on the list as well. But, like, for instance, there's a large push to, you hear all this chat GPT, everything. There's a lot of artificial intelligence developments happening in the market today. So let me ask you, I personally think this is a huge movement in the market, and that is a great place to put your money, right? But, I don't have the time to research all the AI companies out there. How do I know which one to choose? Like, there's so many of them. Which one is really going to, be successful? How do I decide that out of all the securities that exist? When that happens, and you maybe have limited time, like who has the time to go research all these companies, right? What do? I just have this inclination. I know AI will work, right? I tell you, look for AI ETF. Spend your research on kind of getting an ETF that represent all of the AI stocks. This is why ETFs are great. It can narrow down a macro idea that you have and invest in a bucket of all ETFs. Just like, so I'm going to call, I'm not even sure what fruit this is, but say they're plums, right? I'm going to look at these plums and say they're all AI companies. I don't know which one could shoot. Some of them are going to grow huge and big and explored, but I have the whole basket. So even though I have a little percentage in it, that is going to grow and explode, that whole basket, right? Because that one stock is growing and explode. It's going to take over all the stocks, all the other plums. That one AI plum that's in there, I don't know which one it is, going to blow up and explode, but I have the whole basket. So when it explodes, my basket will explode as well. So that's why ETFs are great. They're great for helping you put your investment ideas to work in a bit of a diversified way, but now with a focus. So it's not only one AI stock you're invested in all of the AI stocks. But you do have to research your ETFs and see what is included in that specific ETFs. But that is why ETFs are great, because they come in a lot of different flavors now. The market for ETFs have really opened up, and you have AI ETFs, cybersecurity ETFs. You could have ETFs that just track airlines, or just have airline stocks. You could have crypto ETFs. You could have just retail stocks, which are considered like Macy's, etc., H&M. ETFs that just own those type of securities. So that's how ETFs work. So if you want to kind of get your investment step a little further and you feel like, I kind of could see where the world's going, right? And I could see what will be fruitful in the future. You can use ETFs in that way. Instead of having to put all your eggs in one little security, you're investing in the entire industry. So you invest in the entire AI industry, you invest in the entire airline industry if you're interested in airlines, you invest in the entire crypto industry, etc. Crypto is a funny one because not a lot of it is on exchanges, so you gotta be mindful of that. They have their own kind of system going on. But if you think the world is going to war, I know, kind of scary with all this Gaza and Israel stuff, and Ukraine and Russia. You may want to invest in defense stocks. You could get an ETF that circles defense stocks because you think, that's going to pop the next couple of years. So that's why ETFs are, to me, a sweet spot when it comes to investing, especially for people just getting into the market and just learning about securities. You could, once you get comfortable with VU, then you kind of shift into these different types of ETFs that you would like more exposure to. And then, you could go into the individual securities that you really believe in when you have the time to research them, definitely. But this is a great way to kind of have you in control of your investments and, also diversified, but with a focus. So you could have ETFs that are overall diversified, which is my favorite, VU, VOO. Gives you great returns over the aggregate. You don't have to do nothing else. But if you want to, dabble a little more, you have a little ideas and, you want to get specific exposure, you could also use ETFs with a focus to invest in these different types of industries. That's why I think ETFs are really a great investment tool. So lastly, as I said, you can hire help. And I'm gonna iterate my segment right here. But this is my company in Grenada, and you can always reach out to me. I do 30-minute consultations. But I also willing to help commercial enterprises, banks, funds, etc. You can always reach out to me if you really want to get into these areas and need a little bit of assistance in these areas, and don't want to do it on your own. I do believe, and I do have the confidence that a lot of it can be done solely. I just think people have a fear of it. But if you just need 30 minutes with me to help you get over that fear, sure, reach out. But and you can always hire if you really want more help. But I do believe people can do this independently, and I think ETFs is a great approach for Canadians to get out there, get in the stock market. And, don't listen to people tell you can't invest in the U.S. stock market. That's not true. I've invested for many Canadians, and you can invest in the U.S. stock market, not be an American. So, reach out to me if you really want to know how that works. But, you could also Google online and, just start an account. Go to Charles Schwab. My go-to used to be TD Ameritrade. They just got bought up by Charles Schwab. So go to Charles Schwab, you can sign up for your own account and go into that VU ETF. Great way for you to start. But anyways, so that's all I have for you today, guys. I hope you enjoy the segment. And I really hope I was able to open your minds a little bit to different investment options and help you get a little more comfortable with investing in the stock market. Again, thank you for the time and thank you for listening. Look forward to seeing you guys again. Bye. Hello, everyone. I am Chantal McGuire, your local bred Grenadian actuary and asset liability management expert. Are you satisfied with your current finances? Are you curious and constantly looking for ways to make additional income? Join me on the Bubb Report as we strive to empower you, our valued audience, to become more financially literate and help evolve Grenadians into a mindset that's investment focused and entrepreneurial. Literacy is about freedom. It's about being able to control your money and not letting your money control you. It's about foresight for a brighter future. Our core mission is to promote financial literacy and share money-generating opportunities for everyone. Join us on the last Sunday of every month, starting July 30th, as we strive to provide the keys to financial freedom.
What I hear, Madam President, coming from her is the diary of a mad black woman. Because it is not easy to live, Madam President, in the shadow of a man for over 20 plus years. You give him your blood, you give him your sweat, you give him your tears, and not even be considered for political leadership. Let's talk this morning. Madam President.
Mr. Senator.
Yes, Madam President.
Standing orders of the Senate. Rules of debate. Chapter 33 and chapter 36, I draw to your attention. 33 reminds us of time and manner of speaking. And chapter 36 reminds us of contents of speech. Please be guided. Continue.
Madam President, can you explain a little bit, please, as it relates to the content that was mentioned?
The reference to the mad black woman, I suspect it's the title of a book I have not seen, heard, or have quoted to me. And if it is, that's one use. And if it's not, I'm putting chapter 36 on the table. So that's why I leave it for you to decide.
No problem, Madam President.
Thank you.
I will one day answer to please record that I am asking for that statement to be withdrawn, and I will move on.
Here, but welcome to this edition of the Bubb Report. Folks, I am actually traveling this week. I'm attending an artificial intelligence in communication conference here in Barcelona, Spain. So let me first and foremost apologize for the background music you are hearing, as sometimes when you travel, the internet speed can be a challenge. And so we are at this location here that has some automated background music that we are trying to get out of the way. But outside of that, I thank you for joining us. Of course, I remain committed to ensuring that we do have an episode of the Bubb Report, even though I am traveling this week. So let me thank all of you for joining us this week. And of course, we are going to wrap up our conversation that we started last week in respect of the 2024 estimates of revenue and expenditure that was brought before the Parliament and debated both in the lower and upper houses of the Grenada Parliament. Of course, the budget has been passed, and we look forward to how that estimates of revenue and expenditure would affect the national economy of the state of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique in the next fiscal year. And I'm happy to be joined by our esteemed panelists this morning. I have Mr. William Joseph. Mr. William Joseph, who is our returning guest. Mr. Joseph, we can hardly see your face. I'm seeing more of your wall than your face, so if you can adjust your laptop screen there. Mr. Joseph, welcome to the Bubb Report. It's good to have you.
Good morning, and thank you so much. Good morning, everyone.
Absolutely. And we also have your sparring partner here, Mr. Joseph. It would be remiss of me if I were to have you on the Bubb Report and not have your good friend, who many people may not know this, but Mr. Michael Batiste is also a cousin of mine. Mr. Michael Batiste is from St. David's, but Mr. Michael Batiste is also here. Mr. Batiste, welcome to the Bubb Report. You might be having some internet connectivity issues there, but we are going to try and work with that, sir. Welcome back, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. What a pleasure it is to join my former PS and my good friend here, Willie. And let me add one of the better PS that came through the service.
Hey, morning, Michael. Morning. Good morning. Well, good morning, sir. Let me be correct.
Yeah.
Good morning. Good morning. Sometimes when we get old, we take a little advantage of the thing, you know.
Absolutely. And last but by no means least, we are joined by Mr. Salim Rahman, who is the private sector representative in the upper house of the Grenada Parliament. Mr. Rahman, welcome back to the program, sir. This is your first time here, I believe, having sat as a senator, having been sworn in. So we had a conversation with you before you were sworn in. So I'm certainly happy to have you back in your second budget debate. And I want to begin with you, Mr. Rahman, Senator Rahman. How has this first year been for you? Your second budget debate, but your first year within the context of the Grenada Parliament. What were some of the challenges, learning curves that you have had to navigate with this new process, sir?
So first of all, let me say good morning to you and to your viewers, home and abroad, and to your panelists. Challenges in terms of the first year. You don't realize the amount of reading that it takes to do the job properly, to do a sufficient job. So, for example, the budget document this year is 619 or 620 pages. And then that's just one document. You have other documents like the medium-term debt management strategy. That's another 40 pages. And so you have in total maybe about 10 documents that you have to read and prepare for just for the budget debate. So that's one challenge, is the reading. And the reading is good reading, but it is slow reading because you're dealing with figures.
Yes.
And you're dealing with figures that are presented to you. So you have to see, of course, who is presenting it? The government is presenting it. So you have to make sure and comb through the figures properly to make sure that the different reports say the same things.
Yes.
And there are no contradictions and there are no mistakes in the figures. And you need to compare the figures to see if what the government is saying is actually factual. That's what has been one challenge. Another challenge has been, when I first was asked to do this job, of course, I agreed to serve because I love my country and I want to give back, whatever I could for a time. So I said, you know what, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hire an assistant to help me with appointments and scheduling and note-taking, minuting and all these things. And then I realized that after I got in, a few months after, I realized that the salary for the position was about $852. And so I realized that there's no assistant that's going to be working for that kind of money.
Right.
I realized that I was the assistant. I had to be to do the job. But now we know that there's an increase that is budgeted for that is coming. And so that's one of the things that I intend to do early in the year, is to hire an assistant to really ramp up some of the work that I want to get done.
Absolutely. Now let us get down to brass tacks here in respect of the tone and tenor of the budget, in respect of one of the sectors that you went to bat for, Senator Rahman, and that Mr. Michael Batiste has always been batting for. Agriculture is embedded in his DNA as a son of St. David's, and I was pleasantly surprised, I would say, just by the passion, Senator, that you yourself and Mr. Peter David, who was the immediate former Minister of Agriculture, brought to the fore in respect of agriculture and investment in agriculture. So, Senator Rahman, let us talk about the context of agriculture in the budget. What made you go to bat for agriculture in the way that you did?
Because agriculture is a major job provider. And before tourism, before the rise in tourism, it was actually a major contributor, more than tourism, to the economy. If you look back in the decades before, the years before, you will see that the contribution of agriculture was huge to our economy. And I believe it still needs to be. because to have, to expand your tourism sector and your hotel sector and the offerings of your restaurants and so on, we need to have a local flair. You can go to any foreign country and you can taste their cuisine. You go to Trinidad and you get their doubles and you get their bacon shark and so on. When you come Grenada, we want to taste our local cuisine as well, the way we do things, the way that my grandmother made certain dishes and that are still around. And for those things, you need local produce. We want to make sure that when the tourists come and they come to our restaurants and our hotels in Grenada, that they have local options in terms of drink, not just the usual soft drinks, but that you have, local fruit juices, whatever is in season, golden apple, sorrel, whatever is in season. So I don't see this. I know there's a senator sitting next to be responsible for agriculture.
Yes.
To me, a farmer is a businessman, right? And I don't separate. He's a small businessman, but he's essential to the tourism product. And that's why I stress on the back end of agriculture, because for example, what are the top 10 agricultural products that we have in Grenada that we want to focus on to produce? We have to identify them, just like we identified nutmeg and cocoa in the past, and we have the cooperatives, and it has stood the test of time. What else are we going to do? We're seeing something with soursop now. We're seeing something with soursop coming on stream and strengthening of soursop. What else? We need to have a top 10 so we know what our farmers are producing. We need to know also, we need to make sure that when we say we want the farmers to produce tomatoes because we don't have enough on the market, that's something everybody knows. When you go to the supermarkets, you can hardly find them. They sell out quick. We need to see what is the amount of tomatoes that we need for the market. And we need to be able to connect the produce, the supply with the demand with supply. We need to be able to make that connection so there's not an oversupply or an undersupply, which is always ad hoc. We need to manage that so that we know what we do, the back-end studies. And interestingly enough, government is actually doing that now. We have had a local market research consultant to reimagine a new marketing board, a new structure. And that local marketing consultant is going through the process right now and will present his findings, I believe, by the end of this year. So we will know the back end, what exists. And so when you know what exists, you know the strengths and the weaknesses, opportunities, so forth, we will know how to scale. That's the intention.
And let me bring in Mr. Batiste. Now, Mr. Batiste, you have always critiqued the previous administration in respect of the lack of focus in managing the agricultural sector or really injecting that potential that is required for the agricultural sector to be on the plane that it needs to be in respect of not only Grenada's overall development, but in respect of the rural economy, which you have all articulated that the rural economy has collapsed. So talk to me, Mr. Batiste, in respect of your observations about the direction of the administration for agriculture in Grenada.
Well, let me first say I'm delighted to hear that from the Honorable, the Senator. I was happy to hear him in Parliament speaking with passion about a sector that has been neglected for a very long time. The recent IMF report, it's even more troubling. It highlights areas of growth in the citizen by investment, construction, but it made no mention at all about agriculture contribution to the GDP. I heard recently that the government spoke about a replanting of the spices, and I welcome that. I think it's a good initiative. But we have to look beyond that. Since 2000, when the European Union discontinued support for farm roads and through STABEX funds and farm roads, we as a people have not made any serious investment in the areas of farm roads. A lot of our agricultural products are in the highlands and it's impossible to get to there. So I did not hear this government speak much about farm roads. I did not hear much about new capital and easy financing for small farmers. I pray that in the allocation for the budget, they would make available monies for small farmers. As you imagine now, the agriculture sector would be greatly disadvantaged with the incoming increase in labor. Prior to that, the farmers were complaining that the cash program or the distribution program hampered the effort significantly in getting labor. I pray that the government would find ways to have a permanent labor subsidy program in place whereby agriculture could be subsidized. As it is now, farmers are broke and it's difficult to pay a farmer $60 a day. And I think the government must join in the effort, speaking about production, having a good day's pay, a good day's work for a good day's pay. I think our work ethics have contributed in a negative way towards the decline in agriculture by ways that we pattern labor after for the crash program, where we go in at 9 o'clock in the morning and we come back at 11. I don't think that is a recipe for agricultural production. We have to look at how we resurrect the rural economy. Since Ivan, we have lost the productive sector, and we are now in the month of December. And if you go around the country in rural Grenada and you speak to business people and you speak to the citizens at large, they will tell you that that nutmeg bonus, which had become a culture and a custom in Grenada at the month of December, that's lacking. And we need to find ways how we start putting back the reproductive sector in place and resurrecting the rural economy.
Absolutely. And Senator, I'm going to bring you back in. Now, one of the points you made in your presentation, in your response to the budget, the estimates, was just that lack of capacity. Yes, in respect of, we are talking about how we are going to expand the tourism sector. We're talking about all of the different rooms, the different hotel facilities that are being constructed. But do we have the capacity to supply these places? Yes? Or is it a case where now the economies of scale are going to be such that now we have to start importing produce from other islands? How then, Senator, in your estimation, can the private sector, because when I think of agriculture, I think of agriculture, and of course I'm sure Mr. Joseph here can agree and Mr. Batiste agrees, that agriculture should be reframed as a business. It's agribusiness, a business, right? And we have to start thinking about it in the way that we think about in the context of just a cash crop type of arrangement. So how does the private sector get us to that place of capacity building for the sector?
So a few things to lead off on Brother Batiste's comments.
Yes.
To quote the medium-term debt management strategy report, under trade deficit, it says a further widening of the gap, and I quote, a further widening of the gap between imports and exports, and that is between 2024 to 2026. So that is looking forward. So to speak to his point as to what is government doing with regard to feeder roads, well, they have budgeted $7 million for expansion of feeder roads in 2024. So that's a very good thing. In terms of food security enhancement, that food security enhancement project, they budgeted $9.1 million to scale food production. That's another very good thing. So we're seeing some back-end support there. But as it exists, we currently do not have the agricultural produce to supply even the new supermarket that just opened that I spoke about, which is in the south. I went to them a week before. I had discussions with them, and they were complaining that they're trying to get eggs. They can't get, eggs locally, for the supermarket. Something as simple as eggs. The agricultural supplies, they said that they would love to cater a large section of their fresh fruit and vegetable area for local fruits and supplies. When I went there yesterday, as they recently opened this week, Friday, I realized that there are hardly any local fruits and vegetables there. Maybe some plantain and so on, but there are hardly any produce. So all of the tomatoes are imported, the citrus is imported, and it's not because they don't want to buy local, it's because the scale isn't there. And as I said, the demand and supply, there's not a system that we have where we know what the supply is, we know what the demand is, and we can scale in the right areas to meet it. And that is what is needed. And so if we have one supermarket, a new supermarket, and they don't have, we see in other supermarkets like Real Value and Food Fair, we see they have a greater percentage of local produce because they've been there for a long time. They have their suppliers, they have the consistency of supply and so on. But we're talking about scaling here. So we have this new player that made a significant investment, and they don't have enough local supplies. Clearly, that is an example of not being able to scale our products. We knew that supermarket was coming on stream. It's been in construction for months. Okay. So how long does it take to produce tomatoes, right? If we are planning properly, we should have scaled for that supermarket, because that's where a lot of the restaurants buy their produce. So we want to make sure that, and when we look at that report that I just quoted, that trade deficit will further widening of the gap between 2024 and 2026. That's what projected, but we need to change that projection. And so that's where the back-end study comes in. That's where the Ministry of Agriculture comes in. That's where we need to meet with the farmers. The other thing is something interesting that the Minister of Agriculture mentioned in the Senate in his report is that early in this year, there will be a meeting, and a meeting between the farmers and the business sector will be invited. The business community will be invited. And I look forward to that, because if the business community can meet with the farmers, then perhaps the business community can invest and they can make more direct connections between the farming community. And so we can see an improvement in that area. But the investment with farmers, we know that farmers are loosely organized, to use a nice term. They're loosely organized or not really organized. So how do we as a business community invest in a farmer or with a farmer and not have any assurance that we're going to have a return on investment, that we're going to see one tomato, So that discussion needs to be had. The government needs to be involved. The farming community needs to be supported, and even from a standpoint of loans, of developmental loans, money needs to be available to the farmers in grant funding, which government does, but more money needs to be available in terms of loans, but not necessarily interest-bearing loans, just a loan. So you take $50,000 and you pay back $50,000. So you don't cost the government anything, and you don't have to pay any more than you took. And that is just for farmers, so that you can encourage them, just to pay back what they took, so that you can encourage the sector to grow. Because the inputs are a lot, and you have so many ups and downs and challenges with farming in terms of pests, pesticides, and pests and so on, and other threats, theft, and So that's where we need to go. We're looking forward to that meeting that the minister speaks about, and encouraging the private sector to come out, especially the restaurant owners, the hoteliers. Let them meet directly with the suppliers of fresh fruits and vegetables, and let them work with them in terms of demand and even investment.
Mr. Batiste, Senator Rahman is indicating here that that private sector trust, in the way that he's articulating it, would perhaps be one of the variables that can create that sustainability that the agricultural sector needs.
Well,
your thoughts?
First of all, Senator, we do not need to reinvent the wheels. The structure was already in place in the Ministry of Agriculture, whereby we had what we call contract farming, where farmers meet with the business sector and the stakeholders, and the arrangements were made as to usage. So agriculture was done in a structured way. A guy, it's unreasonable to ask a farmer to just plant tomatoes, and when harvesting, you have to go around in with a bucket and trying to dispose of it. Now, the supermarkets must meet with the farmers and establish what we call contract farming. So the farmer knows exactly what is required, and then the buyer is in sync. So he knows where to sell his produce. That went very well. The other areas is a land bank. A lot of our young farmers do not have access to lands. The Ministry of Agriculture, again, the structures was there to set up, to reestablish or to reinitiate the land bank, whereby the Ministry of Agriculture will make contacts with landowners, the idle landowners, with a view of having them deposit the lands in the bank. And in return, they may get a tax breaks on their land. These lands will be made available to young farmers, along with inputs and assistance from the Extension Division in the Ministry of Agriculture that can help to increase on production. In terms of the eggs that the farmers, the senator spoke of, the shortage of eggs, there's a lot of problems in the poultry industry. And one of the problems is feed. The cost of feed today is too high. We have to find ways how we reduce on the cost of feed to allow Grenadian farmers to have a fair chance in the poultry industry. It's not just in eggs. If you look at our food import bill, and you'll see the amount of poultry that we imported into the country. We have a ready market for poultry. So, but what is restricting our farmers from cutting into that huge food import bill is the inability to access reasonable feed. So we need to look at that. How do we get our people to even grow for local consumption? The idea of meeting the farmers is a noble one, and is one that we should encourage. The other troubling factor is the pre-larceny. There's also the system in place to where there was a pre-larceny fund. A pre-larceny fund would compensate farmers when they lose their produce. Today, that fund have expired. When you bring someone before the courts, these monies now go into the consolidated fund rather than going into the pre-larceny fund, where the farmers can be compensated for his loss. That money now goes to government. We need to correct that, because we need the incentives for to give farmers hope that in the event that they lose their crops, and they're losing it a lot now, that they will be compensated. So we need to start with those little things that we need to do to give farmers the urge to go on. And I pray that you, the senator, as the business sector representative, would convene a meeting of the stakeholders with farmers, small rural farmers, and the business sector, the supermarkets, just like we did with, not locally, but with Sainsbury's supermarket. We had a contract with Sainsbury's supermarket in England, where we were producing organic bananas for export. So they will outline the needs and the conditions, and of course our local farmers met that. So it's time that we re-energize the structures that was already in place, and see how we could facilitate farmers and business people.
Absolutely. Senator Raham and we are going to switch gears now. And one of the, I was very, Senator Raham, and I have to say, you took an extremely clinical approach to your analysis of the 2024 estimates of revenue and expenditure, so much so that I thought perhaps you, who are a surgeon of some sort there. But in respect of one of the issues that, in listening to you, that you articulated was issues in respect of revenue earnings to be able to finance the budget. Now, in this fiscal year, which we're closing this fiscal year, of course, the administration did return to Parliament for a supplementary appropriation close to the end of the fiscal year. So I'm wondering now whether or not your concerns were raised against the backdrop of this approach of returning to the Parliament when you say, you know what, you're meeting these budgetary shortfalls, perhaps because you've had revenue shortfalls, so obviously you need to appropriate more funds. Was that the background in which you articulated those concerns about the projected revenue earnings?
The background of my comments was the data, the data, and it in particular, not necessarily them being able to meet their commitments, no, but in terms of debt. I'm a businessman, and I believe we need to look at the country's finances as a business. Yes, there's more resilience to a country because governments and financial institutions outside will give governments loans that they will not give to businesses. So, for example, our national debt stands at, I believe, about 73% of GDP. Our debt, sorry, yeah, 73% of GDP. And the debt of Japan, as a percentage of GDP, is over 200%. But yet still, Japan receives the financial support and the loans to continue their economic activity. So, but we don't ever want to be in a position whereby the debt cripples our future growth. So for example, we'll be paying 10% more on debts than we did last year. So in last year, we paid $50 million, about 52 million or so in terms of our debts, in terms of interest payments alone. And this year, we'll be paying 61 million. You see? So the issue is that, of course, we need to take loans. We need to have external debt. We need to do that. But how do you manage that? And to make sure that the average percentage of that debt is lower and lower so that we can continue to lower our debt as a percentage of our GDP. I mean, I would love to see that, go all the way down to about 40%, as it is for business. It is dangerous to go above 40% for most businesses in terms of your debt as a percentage of your income. So I'm always looking at that from a business person's perspective in terms of, okay, now we're at 73. In the past, we were at 60 something. We were going down to 50. And because of COVID and because of other issues, the percentage is back up. I mean, the government, one of the things I believe that the government did, I heard them mention that, is that they incorporated the debt of the statutory bodies into the national debt. I don't think that was done before, and that's why we see the percentage higher, because the classification for the debt has somewhat broadened. Yes, it's changed. So I'm always looking at that, because we have to be able to pay our bills. And then I'm looking at how much they're spending. So we see that the government has asked to borrow $375 million this year, 2024. That has been approved already in Parliament. So 375 million is not a small amount of money, So we are growing. Our economy is growing. In 2022, we grew by 7.4%. 2023, we grew by 5.5%. And in 2024, I think it's just under 4%. And between 2024 to 2026, the average growth is about 3.6%. So we're growing. Our economy is growing. But what we need to do is to make sure that the debts that the spending that we are doing, that we see the growth in the economy. We see that reflected and we see it working, because we see that jobs, the unemployment rate has dropped. That has been reported by the IMF. So these are all good signs, but we want the growth to continue. And that's why when they spend, they need to spend in the right areas. And that's why I was looking at the areas in which they are spending. And that's one of the reasons why I caution them in terms of the how fast they are regularizing the employees, which they need to do. The government needs to have a fair system across the board. You have to, everybody has to be treated equally in terms of employment. I agree with that. But how it is implemented and the time factor in which it is implemented, we need to make sure that we implement it in a manner that we can afford to implement it. Because once you increase wages, for example, they're going to increase recurrent expenditure. They had budgeted in 2022 for 2023 that recurrent expenditure would be 749 million. They actually spent 700 million. And now in this 2024, recurrent expenditure is budgeted at 901 million. That's $201 million more. So when you spend, when you look into why, you see, well, the major reason is the regularization of employees, and then you see rent, and then you see putting monies towards the contributory pension, the change of the pension system. So it's a lot of money being spent, $201 million. And then when you look at 2025 and 2026, you see that 900 million is not going down, because once you increase salaries, it's almost impossible to bring that figure back down. So you see that up and up and up for the next 2 years. So that's something we need to look at, the effect that it can have on the public purse.
Mr. Batiste, and then I'm going to bring in Mr. Joseph here to add to this conversation. Mr. Batiste, any thoughts on that? Yes.
Senator, it's so nice to hear you talk about growth. And I pray that you would assist rural Grenada in spreading that growth to rural Grenada, because the growth that I'm hearing about, it has not yet reached rural Grenada. Where I live, I am in the St. Andrews area, and as I see, the St. Andrews economy remains very depressed. High inflation, runaway inflation, high unemployment. Maybe that growth that the senator is talking about maybe has reached the St. George's areas, and we are hoping that in due course it would possibly reach rural Grenada. But that's as far as I can see, and I'm feeling it among the citizens of rural Grenada, especially in the tongue of Grenville or St. Patrick's or St. Mark's. That group has eluded us, and I pray that you would use your good offices to see that we have a mixed economy whereby rural Grenada can boast of that growth that the south of the island is talking about.
Well, if I can interject.
Yes, go ahead, Senator.
When we look at the summary of major projects and programs under the budget, we don't really see money that is being spent necessarily for businesses. We see $419 million government is going to spend more than they did last year, because the budget is 1.656 billion. Last year it was 1.2 something. So $400 million more. Most of this is going back into the economy. So it's not what we see in the private sector. In the private sector, we need more indirect support for growth. We need to have increased airlift, that sort of thing. That's what we need to see in the private sector, so that we can do what we need to do. But in terms of the programs of government and the spending of government is going to be paying public sector employees more. So when people say that they don't know how it will reach the average person, when you get more salary, you're getting more salary, so you have more disposable income. And that is something that, as I mentioned, $201 million is budgeted for. So if we didn't see it before, we hope that we will see it now. When you have other things, like you have some local businessmen investing in different areas into the countryside, we see what is going on in St. David's in terms of the tourism product. We never saw that before 10 years ago. Now we're seeing a greater investment in St. David's, so it's going up. We see local businesses like there's a gentleman by the name of Delon Felix. I didn't get his permission to call his name, but he has a chillaxing business just outside of Grenville, which is a pizza place and a place where you could, you have an insurance, you have a pizza place and a place to relax. That is private investment, and that is causing economic activity, a place for the people to go, a place for the people to relax, a place for the people to enjoy themselves, spend a little money, have some family time. And more of that investment is coming, and it's coming outside of the Grenville town, because you see on the other side is a CTEC project that is coming. and that will be a gas station and a mini mall and so on. So investment of private sector investment is definitely, I just quoted 2 projects for you that is coming to Grenville and coming to other areas. And then with the spending, increased spending of government this year, I've termed this budget as a spending budget because they are spending more than they ever did before. If I had to use one, they're spending a lot. And so we just want to make sure that to see that spending, those dollars, they are multiplied, that those dollars actually create jobs and cause people to have more disposable income, and then people can invest in their own little businesses and you can see the economy continue to grow. That's what we want to see. So the government is doing what they need to do. The first 2022 budget, I think I call it a stability budget. They didn't really go far out on a limb. They just wanted to make sure and manage the situations that they met to show the public that they are competent, that we can trust them, that they have the ability to govern and to manage. And I think we have, in large part, we have seen that. We have seen some shortfalls. You hear people complaining a little bit about health, and that's why the Minister for Health was under a little pressure there. But we see what he said in his defense, the system that he met and so on. So we have to give them time to see how they are going to build out these sectors that they said that they met in a mess, to use their words.
The President of the Senate, Madam Decima Williams, Dr. Decima Williams, would not take too kindly with that language. A mess, just in jest here. But we want to quickly move on. William, we've had you here waiting in the wind, sir. But overall, we want you to put a bow on just your overall impressions. I listened to your voice notes. You've articulated how much you enjoyed and appreciated our last segment in which we discussed. We had a deep dive into the budget, but it was important for us, given the debate that occurred in the Senate, for us to do a part 2. So put a bow on this for us in respect of the 2024 budget.
Yes, well, thank you. And patience is really a good thing, and I prefer it all the time. I mean, I was very pleased to listen to the other 2 panelists go right ahead with their views. I too share some of what I heard. The debate on the agricultural sector. Michael was my minister. We worked together in that area at the time. So he would allow me a little leeway to see a few things about that. But then one of the things I would say is that I think we're at the point now where we need a reset on agricultural development in Grenada. Right? This is a new thing that's on our hands. We don't have the bananas anymore, and we have the nutmeg is doing that, and the cocoa is doing that, and then there's some new areas. So in a sense, in my view, the agricultural infrastructure, to include a new Agricultural Development Act of the Parliament, we need something like that. And then we shape the thing out. There's a lot of marketed intelligence that needs to be covered, and then we bring business into a space with the producers. There are issues regarding land ownership. Somebody raised it earlier. That is a big thing. Access to loans and so on. And then there's a psychology of labor available to agriculture. That is not the 1940 psychology of labor or even sociology of labor anymore. So we need our bright youngsters to study this thing for us. And at some point very soon, we need to sit down and decide how we are going to reshape this thing. We have a number of elements people have identified this morning, but we need to bring them into some sort of arrangement that is unified and coherent, that would allow for the impact of a new agricultural sector to take effect. The point about loans and so on, and the debt is always an interesting aspect of this thing, and some people defend it by saying, listen, if you could service the debt, that's fine, but before you get to that point, you have to make sure that the borrowing is productive, so you don't engage in wasteful borrowing that doesn't produce incomes to enable you to service the debts. So there is something there. Yeah, the recurrent budget is huge this year, but you know where that money goes. First of all, it is underpinning employment in the public sector, which is important, right? People who get monies in the public sector spend those monies with the private sector, and they pay their loans and so on, the banks and credit unions, so the money, and they buy in the shops in the various villages. So that is a positive that's happening there. Expansionary fiscal policy is not necessarily a bad thing. And I believe we see in some of that, Lennox Andrew, I think, made some reference to that in his debate. The real economy, Michael, I think, again, we need to sit down and define what we mean by that now. What are the elements? And I agree with you on the principle, the rebuilding of the rural economy. But now we need to define what elements would comprise the rural economy as we go forward. Because there are a number of bits and pieces all about the place. I believe that conceivably it would involve some of the new age agriculture that we're talking about, some aspects of tourism, some aspects of the creative industry. We need to be talking about how we instill hundreds of unskilled people who live in rural areas, and how we keep employment in communities and so on, and don't have people leave their families and have to commute day by day or go and take up residence, typically in St. George in search of work. So yeah, so we're in a period now where a lot of reset must take place. Some fresh thinking must be brought to bear. And let me put on the table what I believe is an area of fresh thinking that we need. You know, in the Parliament this year, and obviously it has happened before, but given some of what transpired this year, I think, and this is a suggestion, that perhaps we need a presentation on the plan and strategy the day before the budget is actually read. So the Parliament convenes so that the appropriate ministers discuss it with Grenada what the national development plan and strategy is. So we need to come to some understanding regarding that. The budget will come the following day. Now, when we come to the debate on the budget, we're tripping ourselves over two things. The budget is a creature of the cabinet. It flows with ministerial responsibility. It has pretty little to do with a person being a member of parliament. So it seems to me that the minister, who is also an MP, we should address the allocation of time at the level of the floor of the parliament, where the minister talks about the budget in relation to his portfolio for a particular period of time. It's pre-assigned. And then he's allowed a specific period of time to talk about his constituency insofar as the budgetary allocations are concerned. We'd give him a chance now to link back into the plan and strategy and the allocations and how it will impact his constituents as the budget is rolled out in the financial year. The Karakou scenario is a bit different because Karakou is both administratively a vote and at the same time. So our Karakou friends know exactly what they are getting in the budget. They know everything is there. But if you live in St. David, when you live in St. Andrew, east or west or south or whatever, you don't know. Somebody has to sift the thing for you and pull out what it is that's going to be coming your way. So I'm saying that perhaps we could reorganize the business of the debate so that there's a chunk of time for the minister to talk about his portfolio in the context of the budgetary allocation. And then he has another period of time to talk about his constituency in the context of allocations in the budget that would benefit or affect or impact his constituency.
But except Mr. Joseph, I'm sure Mr. Batiste would agree with me here. Isn't that the structure of the debate in the parliament? You have the ministers articulating their various ministries, and then they talk about their constituencies, Mr. Batiste?
Well, the estimates of revenue and expenditure, first of all, you have the leader of the opposition having the first crack at it, and then thereafter the lineup is arranged with both sides as to who go after. You see, the rule is that whatever time it takes the Minister of Finance to present the budget, each member shall have the same time. But I think what should be added is at the closing of the debate, each member in the lower house should be given another 20 or 30 minutes additional time to speak of the constituency. I mean, you heard the senator said it's a 600-page document. If you're going to do
it is a dense document. The estimates is extremely dense.
Huge document, and in most cases you have to respond to the budget without the assistance of any research team or what have you. So in responding to the budget, the members in the lower house should respond directly to the budget, but in closing and wrapping up the debate after the Minister of Finance, or the Minister of Finance again would have the last say, but members should be allowed time to speak about their constituency, because it's hard pressed to do both, to respond to all the areas of the budget and then speak of your constituency. Bearing in mind that the Minister of Finance, the budget is dedicated to the estimates of revenue of expenditure, but he, of course, in wrapping up, he has ample time to speak to his constituents. And of course, there can be no interruptions as to giving the people on the other side time to make undue contribution based on what others say. So the time that we change the standing orders, let's change the standing orders and let's have at least a set time for each member to make a presentation or to rebut something in the budget that one side may have said, because you know you can't stand on a point to make a correction. So the budget has the responding team sometimes at a disadvantage because you only have one crack at it. And I heard there was a controversy where the member for the town of St. George were asked to make his contribution, and he said he wasn't ready, and quite naturally he was not prepared because he only have one shot at it, and he probably was waiting on the person that he's shadowing to respond to. Now, if there was a second crack, there was a second inning where members had the opportunity to do additional rebuttal, maybe that he may have found time to do so in that segment. So we need to look at the standing orders, and maybe with the leader of government business and the leader of the opposition, maybe arrangements can be made to extend the time, because now the budget documents are getting bigger and bigger. And while we're on the budget, allow me to say that I think the increase in the salaries or the standardizing of parliamentarians' pay, I think it was a good thing. I think it was on your show here with the honorable member from Northwest, where we said I once proposed a bill called the Parliamentarian Freedom Act, where we were asking for the same, that each member of parliament be paid appropriately so that they can take care of themselves and their constituents. And I believe in doing so, in doing what this government have done, they have sort of weakened the power of some leaders, because in the past, leaders use the salaries to intimidate their members. When your appointment is being revoked, you stand a chance of becoming a parliamentarian proper. You can't pay your bills if you had outstanding loans. You can't pay the mortgage, you can't pay your car payment, you could hardly survive. So I think it's a good thing. I don't know about the increasing of the minister's salary, but I think in terms of paying parliamentarians a decent salary so that they can live, I think it was a good thing. And I think it was welcome. And I think it will strengthen our democracy. There's no need for anyone to think about crossing the flow to get a ministerial position where they could pay their bills. I think now that act is strengthening. That would strengthen our democracy. And I say kudos to the Prime Minister. He was very brave in doing so, because now he's supervising in a cabinet where members of the lower house, they don't fear losing their positions anymore because they can survive. I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Senator Rahman, I would go over to you for some closing comments, because there are some issues that I want to address with William and Michael that perhaps you as a senator representing the private sector would not be amenable to be speaking on. And that it's a commentary on the debate itself, Senator. But certainly we want to thank you for gracing us with your presence as always, sir. And it would appear, I would say, that the national community in Grenada appreciated the quality and scope of your contribution in this year's budget debate. So the private sector certainly has excellent representation in the upper house of parliament. So over to you, sir, for any closing comments you might have.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the flattering language. I would like to mention in closing an issue that affects productivity in Grenada, and that is transportation. I would like to see that at least, I would have liked to see that a study would have been done this year, and a detailed study needs to be done with regard to how we get, yes, while we expand the economy and while we have different investments in what we would have termed the countryside of Grenada. And so nowhere becomes the countryside anymore because there are investments all over. So no longer, the ideal is that workers don't have to, there's no mass exodus from the north to come to the south to get a job, to get a work. But the transportation network, I think it is fair to say that we have outgrown it. There are bottlenecks, and so it is quite difficult for employees to get to work consistently on time, even though they try to, and even though they have to. You have to do what you have to do. In other countries, it snows. And there's no excuse today. You can't go to work. You can't, say, well, it snowed last night and I had to take an extra 15, 20 minutes to take the snow off of my car or de-ice the car. You have to plan for, whatever comes your way in an economy. But definitely the transportation sector, I would like to see government place some emphasis on this, do the required studies so that we can still maintain the beauty of our country. I think I mentioned that in my budget. We don't want to see major overpasses and the uglification of Grenada. That sort of industrialization that we've seen in other countries. We don't want that. We want to retain our pristine beauty that God Almighty has given us. And what we want to strengthen the transportation sector and find solutions to that difficult area. So that's my closing remarks, and I'd like to thank you for the opportunity. You do a wonderful program, and you have a wide viewership. And that's a testament to the good work that you do. So God bless you and in your efforts and your continued programming. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. As always, please give my regards to your dad, my very good friend. And thank you again for your service to Grenada and the national community. Viewers and listeners, we are going to take a quick break. And just as a reminder, again, I am traveling this weekend, and so I'm not at home in my regular set for the Bubb Report. So that is why you saw folks in the background. I'm actually in Spain, here in Barcelona, Spain, attending an AI and communications conference, but I did feel the need. It was important for us to continue to ensure that the show must go on in respect of the Bubb Report. So please stand by. We're going to take a quick break. And when we wrap up our conversation with Mr. Batiste and Mr. Joseph, we will be joined by two citizens of the beautiful island of Antigua and Barbuda. And here they will be coming to pay tribute to Ricardo Drew. Ricardo Drew, a fallen soca artist who died suddenly in his native Antigua last week. And we have two Antiguan citizens who knew Mr. Drew very well, who are part of the culture landscape in that country, because as you know, Mr. Drew visited Grenada on several occasions. He actually sat with several media personalities in Grenada. And so we're going to pause to reflect on his legacy. It's really sad that his death has really shook not only Antigua and Barbuda, but the entire Caribbean in respect of this very untimely and sudden passing. So folks, please stand by. We'll be right back after this.
Should your loved ones pass on, they deserve to be treated with dignity. And at S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, we can provide you with that service. We can take you every step of the way during your sorrowful moments. When that need arises, call S.A. Johnson Funeral Home at 347-777-9797. That's 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home is a Caribbean family-owned funeral home here in Brooklyn, providing funeral services, but in a dignified way. From cremation to burial to the repatriation of your loved ones, you don't have to go through the hassle, as we provide exceptional service that allows you to mourn and heal peacefully. For more information, visit our website, www.sajohnsonfuneral.org. Send us an email at sajfuneral@aol.com or call 347-777-9797. S.A. Johnson Funeral Home, because you deserve to be treated with dignity.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have a much more than diplomatic passport. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just keep quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not too sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk. Let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bubb Report. We go there.
Viewers and listeners, welcome back to this week's edition of the Bubb Report, and let us get back to Michael and William. William, now one of the I am an avid viewer of your WhatsApp voice notes as we get to the next segment. And one of the observations you made, Mr. Joseph, was that perhaps we really have to get away from the tribalism. Yes, I thought that was really poignant, but I did feel as if that tribalism was on full display in the budget debate. Yes, it's not what we've come to expect from an administration that said that they intended to do things differently. Is it, William, however, that perhaps the Westminster system that we have inherited from our colonial oppressors does not enable us to reimagine or think about new approaches to our politics?
Well, I don't know that I'd be anxious to blame the system as such. I think we just simply blame ourselves and the extent to which we shut up our thinking and do not appreciate. Listen, when I was a boy, you couldn't get into Empire or Regal cinema Christmas Eve night. We didn't believe that we could line up and buy a ticket. It was fight You know, you had to get a bigger boy from your village to buy you a ticket because people were fighting and climbing over one another to purchase a ticket or tickets to get into the cinema. Thank God we've moved away from that. Similarly, we could move away from unnecessary conduct and the use of language, really that, you know, very unhelpful in the period in which we live in particular. So I begin with a concern regarding what seems to me to be the failure to appreciate that 50 years of independence must be made to mean something beneficial, constructive. And we have gone through so much in this little Grenada that we all love at the hands and at the mouths of politicians that I think it's time that folks, you know, calm down. Listen, language is art, really. And you could criticize somebody and you could respond to criticism and not be engaged in verbal violence. You know, there's no need for that, right? And I made a point about, I don't know if you want me to go this far, but there is a danger that I've described previously.
Please go this far. Please go. Please do. Please do.
Maybe I should go there.
Go there. Go there. We go there.
Yeah, as the danger of personalizing one's portfolio. Some ministers have fallen into that trap over time. The portfolio is not yours as is your car or your house. It is a bundle of responsibilities that you have. And if you go to the Constitution, you would see what is expected of a minister. Nothing says to you there that the minister is to exercise ownership over his portfolio. He's to exercise general direction and control over the business of government. So it's not a personal thing. So the temptation is natural, I suppose, in the face of criticism, but then one has to manage oneself. There is something called judgment. There is something called restraint. And there's also something called wisdom. And I think it would benefit all of us, beginning with examples set by our leaders, all of them, opposition side, government side, to shift gears, and present us with more dignified debate, more dignified conduct. Listen, there are times, I suppose, when things get heated in parliaments. You see it outside of Grenada. I have seen fist fights in parliaments and so on in all kinds of countries of the world. So we are not naive about this thing. We are talking now about the need for us to set our own standard, not in relation to practice somewhere else, but in the context of what is desirable for our people at this point in time, bearing in mind what we have experienced. And we in this Caribbean, Grenadians, we have gone through more pain than anybody else, any other Caribbean nation. And so I think that the average Grenadian citizen must be held to be in the right to call on his politicians to raise the bar. There is something called the high ground. And I think it is time, in this case, that the government of Grenada moves and occupies that high ground. If the other people are unwilling, that's for them. But if you occupy the high ground, I imagine that you're going to induce change behavior coming from the other side, because they would then recognize that you're not in the mud. It doesn't cost us anything. It doesn't say that we are not minister if we did not engage in verbal violence, if we did not, rough up the thing and so on. we could do it better than we have done it.
Or call citizens commoners, which I thought was an extremely low blow. But let me get to Michael. Mr. Batiste, you were the leader of the opposition. I mean, you've had your moments. You've had that Nawasa dirty water moment where you brought that bottle of dirty water into the parliament. I think it's still one of the most memorable leader of the opposition rebuttals that we've had in Grenada's post-independence history. But Mr. Batiste, same question that I will put to you that I posed to Mr. Joseph. Is it a function of the system that causes our politicians to behave in the way that they behave in Parliament, as we saw on full display this year again?
Well, first let me say that I attack the issues and I attack it viciously, okay?
Yes.
It was never a personal attack on anyone save and except their personal behavior affects the public interest. Then that's like a different. I mean, I remember raising the question at the call center, and I mentioned Prime Minister's family. That was fair game because his family was involved. But I did not go out of the way to attack him or any member of Parliament personally. But in listening to Willie saying lift the level of debate, I think the level of debate was much higher before. I thought with a breath of fresh air, I thought we would be seeing something different. The move along and the name calling and the disrespect shown to each other, I think it's appalling. And I think we have to find ways how we could minimize that. And the Speaker of the House too, he has to take control of the House. He cannot be, he must not be seen as a partisan speaker where he allows excesses from one side. We expect a debate, but respect is due. I think as we see now, the Parliament, they're lacking respect for each other. Members are using the platform of the House and the lower house and the upper house as a way of venting their personal grievances and hatred towards each other. I never hated anyone when I was in Parliament. Of course, I aggressively attack on some issues. But in wrapping up, I heard the question was asked, what is the rural economy? And I'd rather just wrap up on that. The rural economy is linking tourism with agriculture, whereby the tourism dollar can be scattered in the rural economy, so that the people of rural Grenada can benefit through tourism. The rural economy means cutting down on the huge trade deficit that we have with neighboring islands, where the boats are coming in filled with imported stuff and it's going out empty. The rural economy simple means helping our people to become the food basket of Grenada again. Cutting out on cabbage and lettuce and tomato coming from Canada into Grenada. The rural economy means getting back on track, allowing reasonable concessionary loans to farmers so that they can get back in the lands. We can provide for our food security, because as it is now, God forbid we were to go into another pandemic, we would be worse. We are now worse off than the last one, as if we didn't learn anything from the last time. So now we need to help the rural people to help themselves, not with handouts, but look at the food import bill. Look at our huge food import bill and help our rural people to at least cut down on the food import bill, whereby having that dollar, the dollar that's going out, have it circulate in the rural economy. We lost the nutmeg industry. We no longer have nutmeg pools. Our cocoa industry is in shambles. Yes, we need a cocoa rehabilitation. That would provide significant employment. We have not had a cocoa rehabilitation project since 1978, when the Canadian grant us loans for such. Now is the time to replant. In replanting agriculture and rebuilding agriculture, restructuring agriculture, it will provide significant employment to rural Grenada. That in itself will stop the migration from rural Grenada to the south of the island, where you're going to the south, and it creates all kind of housing, social, and health problems there. So we need to reconcentrate. We need to concentrate specifically on rural Grenada and see how we could resurrect, whether it is in the poultry. We cannot live out fishing. And yes, we don't have bananas for export, but bananas for local production. The marketing board at one point went out and purchased millions of dollars in ripening facilities. You travel around the length and breadth of Grenada today, you can hardly find ripe bananas. We don't always have to export, but we could provide what we could eat, what we grow, and grow what we eat locally, and have that money circulating in the rural communities, and that in itself would play a significant role in the way of life for our people.
Yep. All right, William.
So really, the foundation of the rural economy is really production. What are we going to produce in those areas of Grenada that we agree to describe as rural? Whatever those things are. Yes, the linkages and so on, these play out in the course of the flow. But you have to decide on what you're going to produce. There are people who live in rural areas who are talented to the bone, and many of them, I believe, would fit well under the creative economy. So they're there and they're producing their creative stuff. So that's why I said that the rural economy needs to be defined and identified in terms of the component parts. Agricultural production is one. The linkage with tourism is another. Production under the creative industries is a third area, and then there might well be more. So we will not get those results that we desire by simply saying linkage and so on and so on. Those valid, yes, but how do we get the production in the first instance? What do we do with reversing the poor sociology of labor that now exists in rural communities, where people have been spoiled, people of laboring age, working age, with this handout philosophy and so on of giving seed and all of these things. And so they get easy money and people hardly want to work. We will not have production if people are unwilling to work. So it will take a lot for us to design the thing, to invest in it, and then to manage it so that it then produces the outputs that we desire. And then we have the effects now of the people not having to leave their homes and commute every morning, or leave their homes and go and live in some little place in Greenwich Valley or the other areas and so on, because there's employment in the locale or near enough. They can walk to work or they can take a bus to work nearby, and they don't have to commute these long distances. So there's economic activity within the geographic space. And that economic activity is going to be of different kinds. And when you add it together, you then say, this is the shape of the new rural economy. We are producing A, B, C, and D, and then these are the impacts, these are the effects, these are the results that we are experiencing and harvesting because we've done these other things up front.
Absolutely. We have one final question here from a viewer who's saying, can you ask the panel what percentage you will give the budget and how they think it was articulated? Michael?
What percent?
As a percentage you would give the budget and how you think it would be articulated. How do you think it was articulated?
Well, the budget is very ambitious and generous. I didn't hear much job creation measures. So I'm optimistically hopeful. I do not want to put a number on it. I'm optimistically hopeful because if the government succeed, Grenada succeed, and as someone that's involved in the economic development of Grenada, I want to see great for the country. But There's a lot of work to be done. What my answer to that to that viewer is that the government has a lot of work to do. It's a daunting task on them. They've met an economy that's in ruin.
I think we lost Michael there. So William, if you want to pick up on where Mr. Batiste left off.
Yeah, I've said it before. I'll say it again now. It was a good budget. We need to build on that. There's a lot of information that the public would like to hear, to have available to them about the strategy and plan. And I've suggested that we might have a session of the Parliament before the actual budget, where the development minister explains the strategy, the plan to the country, so that by the time the budget is read, people understand, by and large, what the direction, how these things align, and so on. And the budget is a good budget, right? You look at the effects and so on, the taxation effects. The private sector is relatively happy because they have not tinkered with the fiscal regime. Householders might have been happier if there was a little tax relief or more relief in the area of cost of living and so on. Yes, we householders always look towards that. There was only a little bit of that, but the situation, I believe, has not worsened. The employment effect on the public sector side is there. There's going to be employment generated on the capital side. And let me say lastly, on this capital side issue, this issue of the implementation gap, you see, it is sometimes otherwise expressed as the absorptive capacity of the country to implement these projects, whether they are from loans or grants or domestic resources. You need a threshold of capital assets, human assets, whether it's engineers or who, architects or who, to pull these things through for you. And to the extent that the public sector itself, the public service, has been decimated when it comes to that, you see the problem, and that's why you're going to have the gaps. The question now is, how does the government respond to that if it wishes to have a higher implementation rate and more success in the delivery of its capital program? Elsewhere, I've argued that one of the things you do is you set up a hybrid system, right? Where you bring some of the retired guys, the middle class guys with all kinds of competence and skills and expertise into a working relationship with some of the employees in the public sector side, and also including people in the diaspora, Grenadians, who can help. So in other words, we pool in expertise that is Grenadian, whether people are here or not here. And we unite them on the basis of their willingness to contribute towards the development effort of the country. This has nothing to do with your party or which party you support or not. Nothing to do with that. But it has a lot to do with the willingness and the foresight of the administration to see that there is an opportunity here and to extend the invitation, a valid and serious invitation, to people of talent to come into a relationship that would help us to improve our absorptive capacity and therefore improve the implementation rate of our projects. Retired guys don't want jobs. They don't want no job. But they will give you 3 hours work a day. They might give you 8 hours a week. You work it out.
Yeah.
What you want is the value that they have. You don't want the whole time. You want value. And so you arrange your business so that you extract value in the relationship with them and you see the side benefits. People feel good about their country. It's a big issue. We have to work towards feeling good about our country. Or else, what? The devil will give us nice roads and so on. And then what are we doing? We're fighting on one another. We're not improving. So there we have it. Okay.
On that note, William, thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on the Bubb Report today. Mr. Batiste as well. Thank you as well, sir. I will be seeing you shortly, Mr. Batiste. Remember, the family reunion meeting. And for those in the family, of course, my St. David's Primrose family, the Kingston family. Remember, we have a family reunion happening in August of 2024 in Grenada. And of course, for those of you listening, Cousin Enoch, Cousin Eric, please ensure that you are on the Zoom at 1 p.m. Eastern time in North America, 2 p.m. in Grenada. Cousin Alistair Joseph as well. Make sure that you're there in the meeting.
What? I see Willie laughing. Willie, you didn't know how family.
Michael, I mean, you could adopt me. You could adopt me. You know I need help.
Yeah.
Congrats and blessings to all of you, man. That's good.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very well. Mr. Batiste and Mr. Joseph, thank you again for appearing on the Bubb Report. Viewers and listeners, we will take our final break of the day. We'll take our final break of the day and come back with Mr. Can Cordes, who is the Director of Culture in Antigua and Barbuda. And he will be here to pay tribute to the late Antiguan soca artist who was indeed a son of Antigua and the Caribbean, the late Ricardo Drew. So please stand by while we take in this report on his untimely passing, and we'll be right back for this quick conversation.
The news of soca star Ricardo Drew's death has sent shockwaves throughout the Caribbean. He was found unresponsive in Dickinson, Antigua this morning by a friend who took him to the Lester Bird Medical Center. Emergency resuscitative procedures were initiated, but Drew was pronounced dead at around noon. Fans turned mourners flocked to the hospital when news of his passing spread. His fiancée, Patrice Roberts, was interviewed on Slam 100.5 FM this morning, moments before news broke, and spoke of their upcoming nuptials.
Relationships has a struggle.
Was this thing I seen there glistening on this finger?
Glistening on the right finger. We're working on the big day.
You can help me understand.
She has since reacted to the news via her Instagram page. Drew was born in Antigua in July 1985, moved to Trinidad when he was 4. Throughout his career, he performed with the Roy K All-Stars. Most recently, he was performing with the A-Team Band. He was a brand ambassador with Digicel and Carib. His song Vagabond was a soca breakout hit which earned him Antigua's Power Soca Monarch title. Drew was the father of 5 children, but his charismatic and vibrant stage performances made him a big draw on the carnival circuit. It is not yet known what caused his death. Investigations are continuing.
And welcome back, viewers and listeners. Mr. Cordes, unfortunately, we have you here on the Bubb Report this week under some very sad circumstances. Ideally, I would have liked to be having conversations with you around PAN, because you are an avid panist. Having looked at your bio, you certainly, one of the preeminent arrangers of PAN, in my view, in the Caribbean. And certainly it warms my heart as somebody who is into PAN as well to see that you are investing so much for PAN in Antigua and Barbuda, because we do have a vibrant PAN sector in Grenada as well. So thank you, Mr. Cordes. And first and foremost, let me extend my condolences to you and the cultural fraternity in Antigua and Barbuda at this time.
Sure. Thanks, Kiran. And I want to express condolences to the family and friends of Ricardo Drew. I mean, he's been somebody who has been around for quite a number of years and really progressing, I think, helping to shape the way that people look at productions in the Caribbean and more specifically in Antigua and Barbuda. I remember when he first burst on the scene, it could be sometime, I think around 2010-ish. I was, just coming out of my teenage years, but what he brought was something very different to the stage, brought a very more thought out approach. So, you'd come out and you have all of his dancers. I almost felt like I was watching early Chris Brown, a bit of Michael Jackson, where, everybody's well coordinated with the dancing, and the feature artist as well is very much in and a part of the dancing and things like that. So he definitely brought something different. And, to his family and friends, it definitely gone too soon. I think he was now just making himself known internationally. Sorry about that.
It's all right. It's okay.
Right. So he would have definitely. I think now he's now is his time. right? And it's just unfortunate that he would have left us. But I mean, if we had choices, it wouldn't have happened. But we really want to celebrate his life and his legacy, and the music that he would have left behind.
Talk to us about how Antigua and Barbuda managed to groom such an impressive artist. I find Ricardo Drew's music not only to be infectious, but that there is a message behind it. You know, sometimes you listen to some soca songs and they're just shouting, you know, there is no meaning behind the message, but his music had a particular message to it. Yeah, his music had a particular message to it that really resonated with a lot of people. Hearing, well, you know, he appeared on he made several media appearances and here in Grenada, and people were really appreciative of the quality of his music.
Sure. I mean, I think I must first start by acknowledging that, I mean, he is a Caribbean man by all aspects. So yes, he was born here in Antigua and Barbuda, grew up his very early years, informative years here. He did move to Trinidad to live. His mother is from Trinidad, and would have spent quite a bit of time as well in Caribbean neighborhoods in Miami, Florida, or in and around the Florida area. So definitely a Caribbean man. And I think all of those is what inspired him, you know. If it's one thing about Ricardo Drew, if you know him, he speaks very much about his flag. He just loved Antigua and Barbuda. And I think the competition as well on the ground. So he would have come, burst onto the scenes here in Antigua and Barbuda, where Claudette Peters just hitting her heyday, T and Winter. And these are two massive artists here in Antigua and Barbuda, among others. But I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, these two were at the top of their game and have been running the scene here. And for him, if you know Ricardo Drew, he's very much on not focusing on the negative, but he wants, if this is what he wants to achieve, I mean, he's going to work on it. So he really puts in the time, and he really brought something different. He's also a guy that's him and his team, they see the need to push themselves, not just here in the Caribbean, but all over the world. And with that, he carries, yes, his Antigua and Barbuda flag and fly it very, very high, but also pushes the Caribbean as a unit. And that's something that we need to see much more of creatives. I remember one of his most popular songs, especially for me, one that resonates with me, is a song that he called ID, Stamp Your Name. And I think that just it epitomizes who he is, you know, just looking at him over the last 10 years or so. I mean, he always tried to etch his name. I mean, he would have recently launched his group, DWO, Drew World Order, putting together a collective of musicians, some of the best musicians here in Antigua and Barbuda. And if you see the production of work that these people do, Drew's Day that would have launched a few years ago in partnership with the Antigua Carnival. I mean, the kind of the legacy that he leaves behind really is one that shows that is somebody who's well informed, who wants to push the art form and wants to grow as a creative, and he does, you know, his give back initiatives as well. I mean, so I just wanted to point that, I mean, yes, he's from Antigua, but because of all of this interaction with people from Antigua and Barbuda competing here locally on the ground, because I mean, at the time when I said Claudette and T and Winter, what they hated, I mean, to be able to be compared to them, you really have to go all out. And he did just, I remember one year, if I can just make a quick plug, one year I'm in the stands and he did a song called Superman and flew off of the stand onto the stage. I mean, the level of thought of the production and professionalism that Drew brings, it's second to none, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is, I think, what a lot of people appreciated. Now, he had several breakout songs. Toxic Love is one of them. You know, Hooligan is another. You know,
Tornado more recently.
Tornado recently.
And his hit song for this year. I was in Miami when he performed, and he came out to Lego the Beast, last man standing. You know, you know, the crowd getting crazy. I mean, as I said, I truly believe that he was just I mean, he was great, you know, all these years, but I really think that he's now, you know, kicking off internationally. And though he's been, you know, he's been around and doing his thing, I think that he was just getting into his prime. A lot of people would have probably seen that. And I know his team, they've been working really hard on the ground. And I know it's a shocker for everybody. I mean, I heard the news very early on Tuesday afternoon. I'm still asking if it's people just making a joke. Wednesday morning, and I was overseas, right? I think I was in Seattle at that point in time. I just could not believe the news. Ricardo Drew would have left us, and we're really saddened. I mean, people on the ground really feel they really feel it, and we will be celebrating his life and legacy on the 19th of December at Recreation Ground this year. At
Recreation Ground, that's at the Antigua and Barbuda Recreation Ground in St. John. Yeah, absolutely. You are in the Ministry of Culture. I'm sure are you able to preview what that's going to look like? Who might be coming in, or for that? Hello, young one. Hi. It's okay. She's on the program. It's all right. we love that authentic flow.
So in terms of what that would look like, there is a team. So in the Ministry of Creative Industries, there's two sectors. There's culture and there's festival. So the festival team ultimately is over that. But understand that this is not just something that we are doing from a ministry level. This is a partnership, very much so, with the private community. And this is something everybody is really, because Jude, it's not just us. Yes, he is a cultural envoy for the government of Antigua and Barbuda, and the people of Antigua and Barbuda. But it's not just because of us that this is happening. There are people in the community that very much is pushing for this because they want to celebrate his life and his legacy. I mean, the things that he would have done. There will be multiple artists, some of the best artists here from Antigua and Barbuda. And it's short notice. I mean, Jude would have died earlier this week. So when I say short notice, the artists that are just coming on. I mean, I know I got a call. I may be playing a little bit of fun, celebrating Drew's life on the 19th. So it is, in terms of what it would look like, candlelight visual. We will be celebrating his life, his legacy with his family and with his friends. Drew this year introduced something new to Antigua and Barbuda, him and T and Winter. And if you know the history, they've always been, people have always portrayed them to be enemies, because they're so competitive. They're two males in the soca arena. But this year they had the what was the name of it? Show Off? I think it was Show Off. The name is not coming to me, but they both competed. Drew and Drew World Order, T and Winter and the Iconic Band, one stage, tune for tune. Listen, we had a time this year. And these are the kind of things that, again, a man like Drew and his team brings to the table, and we're really going to miss it. And on the 19th, we will be celebrating with all of his friends, family, all the top names from Antigua and Barbuda will be celebrating with him on the 19th.
Absolutely, absolutely. I join you as Spotify, because I listen to Spotify, and Spotify has this unwrapped, and Ricardo Drew was my third most listened to artist. That's how much I listen to this brother's music, So certainly, I am a cultural lover myself. I'm into carnival, soca, So certainly his loss is definitely felt across the Caribbean. Any final comments from you, sir? How can we? Because I always believe in contextualizing people's life here on Earth in respect of legacy building. Yeah, I mean, you spoke about it, but in closing, if you can offer some comments around how we would remember Ricardo Drew.
So when I spoke about it, it's because for me too, like, I think that as Caribbean people, as people of African descent, I think the legacy is what we need to focus on a lot. I think a lot of times it gets pushed aside. We see that our African brothers and sisters, or fathers and mothers, would have created organizations, businesses, and too many times we are being told, to push that aside and start something new, as opposed to trying to look at building legacy and building generational wealth. And I think that's what Ricardo was aiming to do, him and his team, because it wasn't, and notice I keep saying him and his team, it never felt like it was just him alone. There are a lot of people, and I know very, very, very close friend, Josh Gardner, very close friend and business partner. I'm pretty sure he can't even catch himself up to now. I mean, I have spoken to him briefly. I know he's still in disbelief. But when you speak to these guys, it's not just about, okay, yes, it being Drew or Josh Gardner or anybody in that sector. It is about how can we represent the flag and represent the flag well? How can we continue to nurture young people? A few years now, Drew has been bringing on younger artists and giving them that platform, the platform that he's still riding on. I mean, these are things that we need to see much more from our Black community, especially our Caribbean brothers and sisters. So when you talk about the legacy, I know a lot of people are going to be extremely happy and benefit a lot from what he would have done, the places that he would have taken the name of Antigua and Barbuda, and even some of those same players. So his legacy would live on for a very long time. His music is going to be, it's going to resonate with a lot of people. And I mentioned stamping him. I'm going to read just a line out of it. It says, long after we gone, we name will live on. Let we show them where we from. Been quiet for too long. Now we ready to get on. Let's make history. Right? That is from the song Stamp Your Name. But this is the first line. Imagine this. I remember after he passed, I went and started listening to his music again. It says, before you leave, I want you to link with me. Please come and take a drink with me. Start to jump and sing with me. I mean, I don't know, man. Like some profound words there.
Profound. Yeah, absolutely.
It is. He will be remembered for a very long time to come. And fortunate for him, he did it right. You know, his music is all over the internet. I mean, so for the next how much ever years, you know, once his empire continues to celebrate him, we will be able to catch his music on all social media platforms. We'll be able to buy his content. And I do feel it for his family, his very immediate family, Patrice Roberts down there in Trinidad. I did send her a private message. I mentioned I don't think she would know who I am, but or maybe because I do operate in Trinidad as well. But Drew is somebody that I know. I've spoken to him numerous times. I've done performances on Drew's Day as well. But he's a very cool guy, very down to earth as you see him. My wife also knows him. My wife also knows him personally as well. When he was making his rounds back in 2011, 2012, she would have been one of them that was taking him around the spaces. I mean, a great guy, amazing personality. And to be honest, as I told you, I don't even think that I'm the best person to speak on this topic because there's so much people that's close to him.
And I think we reached out, for full disclosure, we reached out to a lot of those people, like the brother you mentioned, but they're just not in the state to.
I understand. And I understand that. But on behalf of them, I really want to thank you for giving Drew this platform. And giving us this platform here in Antigua and Barbuda. We are mourning the loss of Ricardo Drew. We're still hoping that somebody comes up and say, hey, that was just a joke for this new song. This new song that is going to happen out, you know. But I guess it is what it is. But as I close, on behalf of all of us here from the Ministry of Creative Industries in Antigua and Barbuda, that is the Minister, Honorable Minister Darrell Matthew, our Permanent Secretary, Ms. Sharon Stevens, and everyone, we'd really love to extend condolences to the family and all of the friends on the passing of Ricardo Drew.
Absolutely. Mr. Khan-Cordes, thank you for appearing on the Bubb Report, sir. And again, we extend our condolences to the people of Antigua on this and the people of the Caribbean on this very untimely passing. Viewers and listeners, Mr. Khan-Cordes, who is the Director of Culture in the Antigua and Barbuda, here to talk about, he was talking about the untimely passing of one of my favorite artists, in fact, Ricardo Drew. I was really looking forward to dancing to his music down there in Trinidad and Tobago for Trinidad and Tobago's Carnival next year in 2024. But other plans occurred and he's no longer with us. Of course, may he rest in peace and may his memory be a blessing. Again, I am traveling this week, and so I'm not here on my regular set in Washington, D.C. I'm in Barcelona, Spain, attending an AI conference, an AI and communication conference. So we will see you next week for our Christmas edition of the Bubb Report. I'm your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bubb, wishing everyone a pleasant week. Take care. Bye-bye. Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Bubb Report's social media pages. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch our weekly live show, follow our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can catch repeat episodes on Wednesdays at 4 and 5 p.m. respectively on CRFM Radio and GBN TV in Grenada. We are also viewed on Sundays at 8 p.m. on WPG 10 throughout the Caribbean. Thanks for watching.